This episode of Customer Experience University is sponsored by iqor, a leading provider of customer engagement and technology-enabled business process outsourcing, BPO solutions, supported by 40,000 employees spanning 10 countries and 40-plus contact centers. Passionate about delivering an outstanding omni-channel customer experience for brands across the globe, iqor harnesses intelligent CX technology and AI-driven innovations empowered by Symphony AI, iqor's generative AI ecosystem that can scale teams anywhere. iqor's BPO solutions create happy employees and delighted customers to produce the CX experience brands demand to win and keep customers. Learn more at iqor.com.
My guest today is an unbelievable, exciting person to be talking to in these ever-changing, technology-powered, human-centered times, and that is Bill Tierney. He is the Vice President of Customer Experience and Digital Experience for Southwest Airlines, one of the brands I absolutely adore and love and had the good fortune of working with early in my career with the great Colleen Barrett, who recently passed in May, and our condolences to the Southwest family for that. Bill, I doubt... well, first off, I should ask you about how you live in a household with 5 girls and 1 wife, but I'll pass on that and we'll get right to the really hard questions, which is, I doubt when you were in like 3rd grade and the teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? You said, I want to be the Vice President of Customer Experience and Digital Experience for Southwest Airlines. I'm hunching that was not your answer, so I'd love to hear how you came to where you are today.
That's true. I think I wanted to be a policeman. If I went back and looked at my yearbook then, there's probably two reasons. One is the company itself. I really wanted to work at Southwest Airlines, and it's not uncommon for many of the officers who had several attempts applying and did not get a job with the company. But I was attracted to the culture, what it stood for, the industry, first and foremost. And then I think I have, and it's probably been revealed to me through my career here, I've just always had a desire for taking care of people. I was a busboy when I was young, worked in the restaurant industry, loved that. And I've always been impressed, I think, anywhere I go, any business I interact with, for how well people take care of their customers. And so I started here in the customer relations department, actually responding to letters and inquiries from our customers, oftentimes spending time on the phone and just listening and learning. And from there, I went to revenue management, and which is, if you're familiar, those are the folks who set the prices. So, you may pay $200 for a ticket and the person next to you pays $350. That's what the job was in that, and learned a lot about the core business. And then spent well over a decade, almost 15 years in the marketing department in various roles with respect to the brand, advertising, go-to-market, analytics. And then about 15 months ago, came over to the customer experience department, and it's almost full circle coming home, and I feel at home to be able to influence and work with everyone across the enterprise to really deliver on what I think we're known for, which is service. So it feels good.
Your background takes you from very customer-facing roles and probably the humbling reality of answering customer input to figuring out how the pricing structure works differently for different people. I'm just curious how that sets you up then to move into what I think is, in my opinion, a very innovative customer-centric company that's had its stumbles in the last few years and has had to reclaim its premier place in that space. I'd love to kind of understand the transition and how that helped you deal maybe with a stumble in an otherwise darling brand.
You learn something in every step and maybe don't appreciate it until you look back on it. When I started in customer relations, what I didn't realize is that I was getting a purview to the entire company. One day you'd work with a chief pilot, the next day fuel management, the next day marketing, the next day ground ops on something. And you were really learning the policies, but more importantly, you were learning how we did things, how we took care of customers, the culture of the company. And so that's where I'd say I learned kind of the ethos of what Southwest Airlines was about. I was dipped in that in customer relations. And then in revenue management, I learned the core business of how we make money and the importance of optimizing sort of revenue for the company while living up to our low fare brand promise, which is what we've been known for And then marketing was sort of a culmination of both. I think the brand promise, the delivery of all that. In the space that I worked in, we handled the sale fairs and pricing, working closely with our revenue management team for that. And so you got exposed to at least a broad part of the commercial business. And then in this role, I get exposed to the other half of that, the operational side of the business. So my Monday looks like this. I go to the chief commercial officers meeting, then the chief operations officers meeting. And so you get a broader view of everything the customer intersects with all along the journey. And I think that is what is really fruitful from the time you're inspiring them to book and travel, to the time they go and book and travel on your website, to the day of travel, all their journey into the airport, and the cabin, and when things go well and when they don't go well. And you get to see that big picture, and you get a sense also through the data, the information of what matters most and what needs to be addressed most. So it's fascinating.
You alluded to the ethos of Southwest Airlines. So I'd love to understand what that is in the elevator speech version of it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Herb and Colleen when we started, and I think that it's very much a founder's mentality. It starts at the core of the people who started the company, and I was blessed to spend time with both of them. And I don't know that I've ever met two more authentic human beings. They were committed to excellence. They were caring. They treated everyone with dignity and respect. And the golden rule is something that Southwest Airlines sits on top of, really. But those two lived it out. And so I think they set that expectation, and then that goes out to your employee base and the values you have for how you take care of your employees, and not signs on a wall, but stories, hundreds, thousands of stories of servant leadership that started with those two, and many other leaders after that, and people all across the board. It really starts internally in your culture. And then that expectation then flows outward, I think, to your customers, but it's very consistent. And I would see that in customer relations when something would come up. And, we might have a policy, but we'd also bring understanding to that based on the individual situation of the customer. And just like we've been treated well, I think by our leadership here, we pass that on to the customers. So that's what I mean by the ethos.
I remember when first time I went into Colleen Barrett's office, and she's the first CEO of a major airline, and I remember feeling like I just walked into the living room of my mom's house. I mean, she
Yes.
really was the most gracious, welcoming person I can even envision. And then to take it over to the employee side, I remember going to an employee in I guess onboarding, talking about benefits, and they were singing songs like "I'm an Achiever" at Southwest to actually explain benefits, right? So there was both a welcoming, warm, nurturing environment, but there's also a lot of fun in a precision command and control type of workplace. And I find that to be so fascinating. I mean, it has to be the hardest industry. And I know every industry thinks it's the most difficult industry to operate in, but the last place I would want to be a chief experience officer or a vice president of customer experience would be in an airline. So help me understand how you execute successful experiences when so many variables, including weather, are outside of your control.
Yeah, well, and it's a team effort. We have a fantastic operations group that pivots every day, network operations control group that pivots every day based on what comes their way. And as you know, that something comes their way every day. And I think that you do have to have a thirst for it. I think the airline industry is brutal, and you kind of have to love the challenge of it every day, because the best plan is the ability to adapt a plan, I'd say. And so the customer experience, sort of how I look at it, is it takes place every minute on a daily basis, and you've got to have a great infrastructure to react to that. And we do. And I credit our operations team for that. And then long term, you have to pay attention to what the customers are telling you on a regular basis and make sure you're addressing systemic opportunities in the business. And again, I view that from booking to baggage claim. Primarily, those are the guardrails within that. But from the time they come to their store to the time they depart the airport, what are the biggest friction points that they have? Nobody thinks of this industry historically as easy or fun, or simple or hospitable. And I think that's where, from the time we started, thanks to our founders, we carved out a complete niche And you can take that from the policies that we have. We want your business. We want you on board. We want you happy. We're grateful to be part of your journey. And so we craft these policies. I mean, we're the only carrier that has 2 bags fly free, no change fee, points that don't expire, a loyalty program with no blackouts, because we want that for you. We actually take pride in offering a great product that way. And that flows all the way through the experience. We want our policies to be reasonable. We want the experience to be as simple as possible, calming as possible, easy, flexible. And so you're looking to achieve that in every part of the business. And to your point, that's difficult when things are constantly changing, but it's also when it's most important. People, we are a means to an end. People want to get to a destination and they want to do it as enjoyable as possible.
So Southwest had such a differentiated experience, right? Everything from the way you queue up to get on board, all of those freedoms, and freedom was a key part of, I think, the output of a customer experience and marketing for that matter. And yet it seems like the industry keeps changing. There's been much more pressure on technology and innovation in technology. If anything, the stumble that you guys experienced seemed to be tech related, not having the infrastructure of some of the technology that you needed to handle these incredible peak flows that you had. I mean, I'm certainly not an insider to the industry, but I'd love to get a sense really kind of quickly without belaboring that time, because I think you're a long way from that. Though perceptions linger, right? Customer perceptions are hard to shift.
Sure.
But maybe you can tell me a little bit about what you invested in from a technology stack or a solution stack that helps people resolve some of the challenge that you faced.
Yeah, I would put it in two categories. Heavily on the operations side, our operations team has done a magnificent job in the last 15 months of overhauling a lot, from technologies to policies, procedures, to equipment, and just having us in a great place to ensure that doesn't happen again, and really leapfrogged in a lot of ways. On the customer side, we spent the last year after that and we pivoted a lot of our digital investments to customer enhancements and making things easier for the day of travel and disruptions. And back to sort of what people are looking for. I think when things go wrong, they're looking for good communication and information. They're looking for control. They're looking for features that put them in their control, and mostly they want to get rebooked. So if you kind of put things in the category information, control, and take care of me. And so in the last year, when we looked at, well, what do we need to do? That falls into different categories. Do we have the right policies in place to give people the flexibility and control they want? Do we have the technology and features in place? Are we communicating and getting them the information they need? So we did a variety of different things last year, just with respect to a customer who experiences a disruption with respect to a flight, or say, we made it easier for them to make changes on their own, allow them to make more than one change both bounds of their travel, change to a co-terminal, make the whole process more flexible and easier for them. We invested in things like bag trackings. You know, we have 2 bags fly free. Nobody takes care of people's bags better than we do, and so they can digital pre-check their bag. They can track it through the journey. If in a rare circumstance something happens where it gets lost or damaged, they can file a claim digitally. So it gives them more visibility to what's going on the day of travel. We changed our loyalty program. We got feedback from our customers, you know, post-COVID, it's just a different environment. Made it easier to get tier status. Made it easier to get A-list status and both A-list tier status, qualifying points on credit cards. We looked at a lot of different things that just made the travel easier, both in a regular experience or in those instances where there's a disruption. And that was the focus last year, and I'm proud of what we came out with. I think the most.
Well, and I think it's contrary to the way the trends are going in the rest of the industry, where we're
Yep.
seeing those loyalty programs actually becoming more constricted in lots of ways, right? So
Yeah.
it is very attractive to see where you're going. I keep hearing in the industry that there's a movement in changing the way you board flights, that could be a change for Southwest. I also am hearing more about reclining seats and trying to take away both the mechanical extra weight of that and the little benefit that people get from reclining seats relative to the conflicts that come about as a result of it. How do you make decisions in that? I'm not asking you to commit or tell us any, future or secret plans, but
Yeah.
how do you make decisions about
when is it appropriate to change something like reclining seats or change an onboarding process?
We look at what the customer, I mean, it's not complicated in one sense. You listen to what the customer is saying, you digest it, understand it, and you take action and you make investments where it's going to matter most. And actually, I'm happy to chat about our seats. One last thing on the loyalty program. When everyone else was constraining things, we added a policy that flight credits don't expire. Your whole life, you can have them. Why? Because they're yours. The customers told us that's important too, so we changed the policy. But back to the cabin, which is, probably the most crucial area of the customer experience. This is where people are spending the most time. We were getting a lot of different feedback. As a driver, we knew it was the most important part of the journey, and the customers were telling us several things. They told us that when they're boarding, one of their anxiety points is bin space, and you see that on every carrier. Anyone who goes to board, I don't care what their boarding procedure is, there's a lot of crowding when you fly the competition because people want bin space. So we're adding bigger bins on our planes. With respect to the seats itself, and that's personal space, customers told us they want more comfort and more functionality. So actually, just recently, last week, I was in Germany and we showcased our new seats that we're coming out with next year with partner Recaro. And the seats, the way I like to describe them, they were built to take care of your neck, back, and bottom. And the cushion that goes in, it's a fantastic headrest. I'm one of those people who can never quite get the right spot or fall asleep on a plane. It is a beautiful headrest, very comfortable. There's more support for the back, more support for the bottom. So as far as the seat goes, very comfortable. But then the second part of that equation is the functionality. And so what we've done in front of you is we've put a personal device holder so that, and it's ergonomically designed so that you're comfortable and your neck's not stiff after 2 or 3 hours. Right in front of you, power, USB A and C, fast charging power, right within an arm's reach, so you don't have to reach down below or there isn't a box that's getting in the way of your feet. A tray table that has two cup holders. I'm right-handed, but 10% of the world's population is left-handed, including 3 people in my house. And so it's got dual cup holders. And we think that that's important to people, and not just someone who's left-handed, but people traveling with families. Sometimes you've got a kid and you kind of move the cup over, but then you don't have a spot for your cup. And every piece of it is designed for comfort, functionality, and really productivity. So I'm really proud of that. All of that is based on what we heard from the customer and what we went and did. And 18 months of rigorous testing, research, all kinds of different customer segments, and they sort of helped us design it. They gave us feedback on these different parts. And so there's a perfect example right there. And it's another example of when the competition's taking things away, we're giving more things to the customer. And that's what we're proud of.
And what you're giving, I mean, it surely has some expense, but it's more ergonomically considered, right? And it creates a value proposition that differentiates you without, I can only imagine everybody has to revise seats or whatever as part of their business, their upgrades and their product. But it really does feel customer-centric design, listening to customers, observing customers. And that is not just a function of the surveys, though you are very good at using your survey data, from what I gather, based on experiences that I've had with the airline. If I've ever provided survey input, I do get feedback, which is pretty unusual, I think, from a lot of people who do solicit feedback, but don't necessarily let you know in a closed loop sense whether that survey is being used.
Yeah, and we have opportunities in that space, to be honest with you, doctor, but we do use it regularly. And one of the practices I mentioned being in the chief operations officer meeting, and he loves this. Every Monday when I'm in there, we'll go over the stats of performance, and then we have this voice of the customer update where I read open ends. Some open ends that didn't go well, some that did go well, because he's got all his operating groups in there. And I think that's a very important practice to be regularly looking at what the customer is telling you live, not just the data, but literally in their own words.
So, Bill, I have been in this industry so long that we didn't call it customer experience. We didn't have a title like that. Nobody had a vice president of customer experience, let alone digital experience. And so I've watched that evolution. And actually, I'm working with a university right now where we're trying to develop the first master's degree program in customer experience, right? So we're trying to figure out how do we train the next generation of people, because I've spent my career taking people who were in ops who suddenly got positioned in this newfangled role called customer experience, not knowing anything about the core competencies needed to make it happen. So I'm asking you, kind of as somebody who sits in that job day in and day out for a major airline, what you would want to give by way of guidance to somebody who's coming new to a role, or maybe some curriculum development team that's trying to make sure people are ready to step into the job. What are the core competencies you think of a customer experience, digital experience officer in this technology powered, human centered age?
Yeah, it's a strange combination, I think. There's a methodical part to it, for sure, but there's also an empathy and warmth part to it. And I think it's a combination of that sort of methodical mindset, but there has to be an organic openness when you go into a role like this. And so I think analytical skills are very important and helpful. The ability to appreciate the big picture, the ability to understand intention. What is the customer intending to do, and how are we delivering versus that? And of course, you can have the best methodical plan, but if you don't deliver it with that warmth and hospitality, um, it doesn't go very well. I'm going to give you an example here that blows me away. I mentioned looking every Monday at the data. And every Monday when I look through the scores, I'll look through, we use an NPS scale, and nines and tens are promoters. Then you've got folks who are sort of on the fence, neutral, and then detractors. I'm stunned every Monday. I shouldn't be. When I look at the number of people who had maybe a 3 or 4 hour delay, a pretty rough experience, and they give us a 10, and they give us a 10. Now, nearly every time they give us a 10, it's because of our people, which has nothing to do with technology. It has nothing to do with some digital feature in that case. It has to do with how our people handled the situation. Did they communicate well? Did they hustle? Did they show caring support for the customer? I mean, I don't know about you. I don't know that I'm a good enough person to have a 4 hour delay and take time to go write a note and give a company a 10 and tell them how great they were. That's how powerful our people are. And I think that is a core understanding these days when everyone's talking about AI and, of course, all these things you need to deliver core service with speed and accuracy. You just can't forget about the human element, because it is the most defining piece of the customer experience. And I have data that proves it. It shows when people get good hospitality or not, in a clean experience or a disrupted experience. And nothing moves the needle more than that. So I would also just counsel them to keep that in mind, in addition to journey maps and data and research and everything else. The delivery and the recoverability with your humans delivering the service has to be fantastic.
So I want to tell you two stories about Southwest Airlines. Are you ready? You always have to worry about this, right? Like when everybody says something like that, it's like, okay, what's it going to be? But the first was my wife died of breast cancer, and my daughter was trying to get home for Christmas. Well, we actually lived in Florida at the time, but our home was based out of Colorado. And I went back to where my wife was from. My son was in Colorado, and my daughter was trying to get back. But emotionally, it was impossible for her to seem to figure out how to do that. I mean, she was just not in a place.
Yeah.
And she had to change her ticket several times through Southwest. They could not have been more gracious. They could have not been more kind, more loving, more empathic. They had a business to run, and clearly they had seats to fill. But my daughter got to that Christmas only because of the nurturance of the people at Southwest. So number one, my son got married, and on his honeymoon, he took a Southwest flight where they created a crown for both the king, for him and his wife, made out of peanut bags. Right? These are stories, and we live on stories in our society. And I think those are all human-centered stories. The technology is satisfy or dissatisfy, but the people made both of those things happen. Blessings to you for what you do each and every day to make it happen for travelers like me who absolutely love the brand. And I certainly can pay to fly first class on other airlines, but if I have the opportunity to fly Southwest, I just know that it's going to be an incredible experience from a human perspective. So thank you for that. I want to make sure that everybody knows kind of about where they can learn more about Southwest Airlines, southwestairlines.com if you're not flying it. You guys are pretty much everywhere in the U.S., right? Is there any place you're not flying that I should be aware of?
We cover most places in the U.S. We're number one on the top, and half of the top DMSAs. So we cover that, and then south in the Caribbean, we have a pretty good footprint as well. So.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. Bill Tierney, Vice President, Customer Experience, Digital Experience. Just wanted to thank also iqor.
This episode of Customer Experience University is sponsored by iqor, a leading provider of customer engagement and technology-enabled business process outsourcing, BPO solutions, supported by 40,000 employees spanning 10 countries and 40-plus contact centers. Learn more at iqor.com.